Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis, where we unpack that link between creativity and mental illness. Today, we're diving into the life of Isadora Duncan, a dance pioneer who didn't just revolutionize movement, but challenged societal norms in a big way.
Yeah, it's striking how her artistry, it wasn't just physical expression, it was intertwined with the culture and the intellectual currents of the time, reflecting anxieties and aspirations of her era.
Absolutely. And to understand that, let's just start with a scene that I think really captures her essence. Imagine, okay, the ancient Egyptian ruins of the Kamambo Temple, bathed in moonlight. Isadora, in a flowing white tunic, dances solo, weaving in and out of these towering columns, and the moonlight and shadows create almost like a rhythm that feels like music. Talk about setting the stage.
Yeah, it really illustrates her genius for transforming any space into like a canvas for her art. It's not just dancing, it's making a statement, pushing the boundaries of what dance could be.
Okay, so to unpack this, we need to go back to her roots. Duncan's upbringing in San Francisco was uh, unconventional, to say the least. Her mother was a piano teacher with bohemian leanings. So imagine being surrounded by classical art reproductions growing up.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial because it nurtured her belief in the body as the primary source of knowledge and expression. It wasn't just aesthetics. She believed the body was a direct conduit to truth and beauty.
And this wasn't some random idea. She was a product of her time, emerging amidst this melting pot of American movement traditions. You had the structured world of ballet, the energetic pulse of social dance, and the burgeoning physical culture movement.
Exactly. And this is where her genius shines through. She drew inspiration from all these sources, but refused to be limited by them. So instead of adhering to that strict formality of ballet, she gravitated toward the fluidity of natural human movement. Like, think walking, skipping, running, even elements of gymnastics, it all got woven into her technique.
It wasn't just a stylistic choice, was it? This rejection of traditional ballet was a deliberate act to elevate dance to high art, challenging what was considered culture at the time.
Absolutely. She was incredibly strategic. She understood that to gain recognition, she needed to connect her work to a tradition. That carried weight. And what better source of legitimacy than classical Greece?
Ah, yes, classical Greece, the flowing tunics, bare feet, references to Greek mythology and art. I mean, even incorporating visual elements like Botticelli's Primavera. It all cultivated this image of timeless beauty and artistic lineage.
Right. And let's not forget the Elgin marbles. She was captivated by their sculpted forms, seeing the essence of movement frozen in time, the human body as a living sculpture, capable of expressing those ideals of harmony and balance.
It's incredible how she drew these connections. It wasn't just about aesthetics, right? It was tapping into the intellectual zeitgeist. Darwinian evolution and, interestingly, Haeckel's monism were like the hot topics back then. And Duncan saw her natural body as like an embodiment of these theories.
Now, this is where things get interesting. Haeckel's monism, to put it simply, it proposed that everything in the universe is interconnected. Mind and matter, humans and nature. And Duncan embraced this, seeing nature as a source of order and harmony, especially amid the rapid modernization, of the world around her.
So by framing her dance as a reflection of natural laws and evolutionary principles, she was subverting societal expectations, especially surrounding the female body, which, in the Victorian era, were pretty restrictive to say the least.
Exactly. And let's not forget her personal life choices. Further challenge those Victorian norms, advocacy for voluntary motherhood, defiance of traditional marriage, her very public criticism of restrictive clothing. It all contributed to her image as this radical figure.
A walking, dancing embodiment of rebellion. It's important to note, though, this wasn't just about personal freedom for her. Duncan envisioned her dance as social commentary, like a powerful way to critique, the perceived materialism and hypocrisy of American society.
And this resonated with the political and social reformers of what was called the New York Little Renaissance. They saw in her expressive body a symbol of individual liberation, rejection of the constraints imposed by society.
Remarkable how her art became intertwined with this movement. And it wasn't just symbolic. Her performances often had a direct political edge. Like, for example, dances like the Marche Slave and Marseillaise tapped into that nationalistic fervor, stirring audiences with this potent blend of movement and emotion.
What's fascinating is how she managed to embody both individual expression and the sense of collective identity. She was a unique artist, undoubtedly, but she also became like a mirror reflecting the hopes and anxieties of a nation on the cusp of transformation.
Her life and art were so intertwined with the political landscape. Makes you wonder, what would she be dancing about if she were alive today?
That's a question worth pondering. Imagine Isadora Duncan in the 21st century. What causes would she champion? What boundaries would she be pushing? Something to think about as we continue to unravel the captivating world of Isadora Duncan.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive into Isadora Duncan's life and work. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. When we left off, we were talking about how Isadora Duncan's art wasn't just about beautiful movement. It was a way to challenge conventions, and to push boundaries.
And one of the most significant boundaries she pushed was in the realm of the female body. In a time when women were expected to be, like, corseted and contained, her flowing tunics and bare legs were really, like, revolutionary. It's hard to grasp how radical that was back then.
It's crucial to understand the context here. Think about the spectacle extravaganzas that were popular on stage at the time. These shows, while visually stunning, often reduce the female body to like a spectacle for the male gaze.
Hold on. Spectacle extravaganzas, for like those of us who aren't theater historians, could you paint us a picture of what those were like?
Of course. Imagine elaborate costumes, massive sets, and like synchronized movements. Think Busby Berkeley, but on a grander scale. And the dancers, often scantily clad, were just another element of this visual feast. It was all about spectacle, not necessarily about artistic expression.
Got it. So how did Duncan's approach differ?
Duncan completely rejected that approach. Her costumes, inspired by ancient Greece, emphasized freedom of movement, the natural form of the body. Her bare legs, far from being scandalous as some saw them, were a celebration of the body's inherent beauty and power.
It's amazing how she turned what some considered scandalous into a symbol of artistic expression. And it wasn't just about defying social norms, right? It was about reclaiming the female body from the male gaze and presenting it as like a source of strength and agency.
Absolutely. And this ties into the burgeoning feminist movement of the time. Women were fighting for the right to vote, access to education and professional opportunities, and crucially control over their own bodies.
And Duncan's art became like a powerful voice in that movement. She wasn't just dancing, she was advocating for a new vision of femininity, one that embraced individuality and, rejected the constraints of Victorian morality.
A great example of this is her advocacy for voluntary motherhood. Now, that was a radical idea at the time. She believed that women should have the right to choose whether or not to have children, regardless of marital status.
And she lived by those beliefs, famously having 2 children out of wedlock. This, as you can imagine, caused quite a stir in the press and among her more conservative patrons.
But Duncan refused to be silenced. She saw her body, her pregnancy, and her motherhood as integral to her art, using them to challenge the hypocrisy and double standards surrounding female sexuality at the time.
Wow, she even incorporated her pregnancy into her performances. That's incredible. She was truly ahead of her time.
She was. She saw it as a natural expression of the creative force that flowed through her. Duncan was a true pioneer in, challenging the way women's bodies were perceived and controlled.
Her criticism of restrictive clothing was another, fascinating aspect of her feminism. I know she saw corsets and other constricting garments as, a symbol of the limitations imposed on women's movement and expression.
Exactly. It's amazing how she connected these seemingly disparate issues, dance, clothing, motherhood, and wove them into a cohesive message about personal liberation and artistic freedom.
And this message resonated far beyond the dance world, didn't it? It became intertwined with the growing cultural nationalism of the era, particularly in the years leading up to World War I.
You're right. Duncan's art became a symbol of this new America, a nation striving to break free from the shackles of the past and embrace a more progressive, inclusive future.
So how did that manifest in her work?
Well, it was reflected in her choice of music and themes. She drew inspiration from composers like Beethoven, Wagner, and Tchaikovsky, whose works often evoked strong emotions, nationalistic sentiments.
And her performances of the Marche Slave and the Marseillaise were particularly potent examples of how she could tap into the collective energy of a nation. They were more than just entertainment. They were rallying cries for freedom and social change.
And when war broke out in Europe, Duncan's art took on an even more explicitly political dimension. She used her performances to raise funds for war relief efforts and to express her solidarity with the Allied cause.
I remember reading about how she performed the Marseillaise draped in the American flag. It was a powerful statement of patriotism and like a testament to her belief in the unifying power of art.
Absolutely, but it's important to remember that Duncan's nationalism wasn't like blind or jingoistic. She was a vocal critic of war, seeing it as a senseless waste of human life.
So it was a nuanced view then. She wasn't just blindly waving the flag.
Exactly. She believed that art had the power to transcend national boundaries, to promote understanding and compassion between people.
This really highlights her complex relationship with politics.
Yeah.
She was an artist first and foremost, but she also recognized the power of her art to inspire social change.
As she didn't align herself with any particular political party or ideology, instead she used her dance to express her own unique vision of a more just and beautiful world.
A vision that was deeply rooted in her belief in the power of the individual, right?
Precisely. She saw dance as a way for each person to connect with their own inner truth and to express it authentically without the constraints of tradition or societal expectations.
That's beautiful. And this emphasis on individual expression was a key element of her teaching philosophy as well, wasn't it? I know she believed that dance should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their age, background, or physical ability.
You're absolutely right. Her schools, which she established in various cities throughout the world, were havens for creative exploration and personal growth. She wanted to create a space where people could discover the joy of movement and unlock their own artistic potential.
So her schools were more than just dance studios.
Much more. They were communities where people came together to share their love of art and to explore the possibilities of human expression.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effect of her work. It's this legacy of individual empowerment, artistic freedom, and social engagement that continues to inspire dancers and artists today.
Duncan's work reminds us that art is not just about aesthetics. It's about pushing boundaries, challenging conventions, and using our voices to create a more just and beautiful world.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll continue our deep dive into the life and legacy of Isadora Duncan in just a moment. Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. Before we move on, I wanted to circle back to something we talked about earlier, Duncan's vision for a more expressive and inclusive world through dance. But like we've seen, her life was a tapestry woven with artistry and idealism, but also, personal tragedies and financial struggles.
And what's remarkable is that those struggles often seem to fuel her creativity. She channeled her pain and frustration into her art, using it as a way to process her experiences and to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level.
You're right. It's impossible to ignore the devastating event in her life, the drowning of her two young children in 1913.
Yeah.
The grief, must have been unimaginable.
Yeah, this tragedy had a profound impact on her work. Her dances, they became imbued with this new depth of sorrow and loss, yet also a fierce determination to find meaning and beauty amidst the suffering.
It's almost as if the rawness of her experience infused her art with more power.
Exactly. She even created a dance specifically dedicated to her children, which became one of the most moving and emotionally powerful pieces in her repertoire. It's a testament to her ability to transform personal pain into a universal artistic experience.
Yeah, her ability to connect with raw human emotion, it's what truly captivated audiences. People weren't just watching her dance. They were experiencing her joy, her sorrow, her passion, her rage.
Absolutely. She possessed this incredible ability to make the personal feel universal, allowing her own struggles to resonate with the hopes and fears of everyone watching.
And this was especially evident in her later years, as she encountered, increasing financial difficulties and public scrutiny.
Yeah.
I know she was criticized for her unconventional lifestyle, her political views, and even, her aging body. It's disheartening.
It is. But, despite it all, Duncan refused to let those criticisms define her. She continued to dance, to teach, and to advocate for the things she believed in, even as the world around her shifted dramatically.
Yeah, it must have been challenging to navigate that shifting cultural landscape of the 1920s. The rise of the flapper, the evolving ideals of beauty, the growing disillusionment with traditional values. It was like an era of profound change.
It was indeed. And Duncan, who had once been a symbol of rebellion and liberation, found herself, at odds with the emerging generation in many ways.
It's also ironic, isn't it? The world that she helped to create seemed to be, moving on without her.
There's a certain poetry to that, I suppose. But, Even as her popularity waned, she never relinquished her passion for dance or her belief in its transformative power.
It's truly inspiring, her unwavering dedication.
Yeah, she continued to experiment, to push boundaries, and to explore new avenues of expression through movement.
And even though she may not have achieved the, widespread recognition she desired in America, her legacy continues to inspire dancers and artists, globally.
Oh, her influence is undeniable. You can see it in the work of countless modern dance pioneers from, Martha Graham to Merce Cunningham and beyond.
But it's more than just specific movements or techniques.
You're right. It's about her spirit, her passion, her unshakable belief in the power of the body to express like the full spectrum of human emotion.
Duncan showed us that dance is not, mere entertainment. It's about art, it's about life, it's about connecting with our deepest selves and, the world that surrounds us.
Beautifully put. And that's a legacy that will undoubtedly continue to resonate, for generations to come.
So as we conclude this deep dive into Isadora Duncan's life and work, what does it all mean? What can we take away from, her incredible journey?
Isadora Duncan's life and work remind us that true artistry, it transcends, technical skill or aesthetic beauty. It's about pushing boundaries, challenging conventions, and using your art as a platform to make a statement about the world you inhabit.
Yeah, it's about passion, it's about courage, it's about using your body and your voice to, express your unique vision even when faced with adversity.
And, her story also underscores the intricate relationship between creativity and mental health. She faced, immense personal struggles, yet she found solace and strength in her art. It was a way to process her experiences, to connect with others, and to find meaning in a world that often felt, chaotic and unpredictable.
As we wrap up this episode of the Mad Genius Thesis, we leave you with a final thought-provoking question. If Isadora Duncan were alive today, what would she be dancing about? What injustices would she be speaking out against? What boundaries would she be pushing?
It's a question worth pondering, isn't it? It challenges us to consider the power of art to inspire, to provoke, and to enact change. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Isadora Duncan's extraordinary life and work.